Good evening, followers. Eddie here. It's Tuesday, November 14th. Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast. It's 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And tonight's topic is toxic people, toxic work environments. As I was preparing for this live this evening, I realized that this is a really loaded topic. So the fact that I'm covering both toxic people and work environments, I might actually have to break this down into two topics of conversation because this is a loaded topic. So welcome. If you can take a second, for those of you that are popping in, there is an airplane icon on the lower right hand corner. If you can take a second like I'm doing right now and just kind of click to maybe 10 people that you know, 20 people that you know, let them know that the podcast is starting. And if you feel that they could benefit what we're about to talk about, have them join in. And I'm just sending some messages out now, and then we're going to get started. Okay, so I want to start the conversation with toxic work environments. I would say in probably 100% of everyone that's in a working environment, whether it's white collar, blue collar, has experienced some kind of toxicity in their work environment. And I'm going to say that from my personal experience, observation, and research, that if there's a toxic work environment, it starts from the top and trickles down. Because, well, first of all, do you agree with me or not? I mean, does it start from the top down, or is it from the line people up to the top? Well, the upper management really drives the culture of an office or any work setting, and they drive the direction that their team is going to be moving. So if there is a toxic work environment in any type of work setting, I would say we need to look at management and see how that can be corrected and if it can be corrected or not. But first you got to know, what does a toxic work environment look like? When you walk into a setting that's toxic, you may not know it at first. And it's difficult to kind of figure out before you get employed if you're walking into a hotbed of toxicity. But there are some tips that I will share with you that you can employ in your interviewing process to identify if you're walking to an environment that may not be very good for your mental health and well-being and your professional advancement. But a toxic work environment is one where people feel traumatized, stressed, or harassed. And that can look like very different things for someone in a work environment. It impacts your working with your colleagues and with your manager. Basically, toxic work environment. It could look like a manager that stonewalls, gaslighting, environment that breeds and nurtures cliques and gossiping, backstabbing, right? Treatment that's unfair and unequitable among employees. Now, that could be considered favoritism, or it could just be that, I don't know, you're just an outlier for some reason. And there's always a reason that you're an outlier. And I would say folks that find themselves as an outlier in a work environment, it could be because they are not walking along the same beat of the drum of the environment that's there. Maybe that's just not their jam. They recognize that it's unhealthy, and they're not just flowing in the same direction as everybody else. So they're rowing upstream and everybody else is rowing downstream. So when you are the victim of a toxic work environment, it impairs you. You may not feel it at first because you're walking in with optimism. You have a sense of passion for your work, and you want to do your best. But that's not necessarily what's going to happen when toxicity is surrounding you, swirling you, and perhaps you might be even the person that is the focal point of the clan of toxic individuals of a work environment. So let's just say it is an environment that has a lot of gossiping going on. You may not be the type of person that likes to partake in gossiping. So the fact that you may walk away and you're not including yourself in the dialogue, or maybe you might make a statement that is protective of a person that is of the subject matter of the conversation that may be somewhat disparaging, then the red flag goes up amongst those circles of folks that are okay with the banter, and now you find yourself excluded. So an environment at work where there is toxicity because of gossip, you can find yourself cast out, not included in events, the last to know if there's important information that's disseminated, if you even find out at all. Feeling excluded can be demoralizing, especially when the company may talk about and tout that they are an environment that is team oriented and you don't feel like you're part of the team. There could be aspects of subtle bullying, and bullying can look different, and it can be very in your face, and it could be very subtle. But if you are in an environment where everyone is of the same ilk, it could be hard for the individual who's on the receiving end of the bullying to report it, because if you go into an office to report it to a manager, HR, or otherwise, to table your grievance, you may be gaslighted, which is another sign of a toxic work environment. Gaslighting is when someone makes you feel that how you're perceived of an occurrence or your thoughts to be inaccurate, or that you did not see what you saw, you did not understand what you understood to have happened, how they flip it around, or maybe you even feel like it was your fault, that somehow you are accountable for whatever transpired, and maybe it's not that big of a deal. So gaslighting is a form of toxic work environment. If you're in a work environment that disregards your personal time and also your boundaries. So if you are trying to establish where you're completely professional and you manage it in such a way that you're not talking much about your outside life, or you're trying to keep those dialogues to a minimum, and you're felt to be like, well, you don't open up enough. Everybody else here talks about what's going on in your life. How come you don't? What's the big secret? What's the big deal? So encouraging you to come out of your comfort zone in a manner where the topic of discussion has nothing to do that relates to your work, and in the fact that you're not sharing, you are also somewhat of an outcast and become an outlier of the group. You might find that management is unapproachable. There's something called stonewalling. And you'll know that you're going through a situation where you're being stonewalled by your manager because they're avoiding conversation with you. If they see you in an area, they will look through you and past you, won't acknowledge your presence. Good morning. How are you doing? They won't include you in any activities or dialogues communally with the group. If you send them a communication by email, they won't respond or acknowledge that they received it, return phone calls. I mean, all of it sounds really petty and immature, but those are acts of stonewalling, and the recipient of those types of behavior, eventually it whittles away at their passion for what they do, their drive, their productivity, their communication. It just drains the individual little by little. You'll get up in the morning wanting to go to work in the beginning, and day after day, it feels like a battle. Every time you walk into the office, you have to put your game face on. And who wants to have to put on a game face in order to start their day or make it through the day? Avoiding situations because it's just too draining. You know that it's going to be an unproductive conversation. There's no teamwork, although they say this is a team, we are a team, but you don't see the teamwork. The drive is going in one direction and never in your direction. Casual disrespect, comments that are disparaging but veiled, where you're caught off guard and you're not necessarily prepared to respond, and you have to find a diplomatic way in responding, because if you don't manage your words properly, it could put you in a situation where you might be written up if you're an employee, or called into an office for a meeting to discuss your behavior with management. Let's see. Overworking staff. Toxic work environments is where you find that there's not much of a work-life balance, and you are constantly doing more. And when you try to create boundaries with your time, because you have outside obligations, personal life, what have you, you made to feel guilty that you are meeting those obligations and not continually pouring into the organization beyond the scope of what you're able to or the requirements of your job description. So what can you do when you're dealing with situations like that? First of all, let's dial it back a little bit. When you're moving into a situation and you're interviewing for a position at a company, you need to understand that it's a mutual interview, first of all. It's not a one-way street. Yes, you're looking for the position to secure it for whatever reason, more income, advancement, to fulfill your obligations, but it's a two-way street. The employer is trying to identify a candidate to fill a role according to the job description requirements and the eligibility that that individual will have, or the credentials based on their education and experience. And conversely, as the applicant, you are looking to ensure that not only that the position is going to be able to satisfy your financial obligations and maybe even matters of benefits, health insurance, 401k, and things of that nature, but you also want to make sure that it's a healthy one. And one of the ways that you can identify what the culture is and the work environment is, go ahead and do some research on the internet about the company. See what people are saying about it. Do your due diligence before that interview, after you accept it. Maybe before you accept the invitation for an interview, you should know a lot about the company and the people that you will be meeting. That's number one. That's going to help you make a successful interview anyway. And then when you're in front of the interviewer, there's certain questions that you should think about asking. Why is the position open? How long has it been open? What was the performance of the last person? Were they successful? Why did they leave the position? What is the culture here? Is there a lot of turnover in this department or in the company overall? What is the company attitude? All those different things will help you identify little pinpoints that could give you red flags to say, this may not be a work culture that I would like to entertain. But, if you do find yourself working alongside a group of people that nurture the gossiping, the cliques, the exclusivity, the stonewalling, the gaslighting, the unfair treatment, and you need the work before you can move on, you can navigate those situations by finding a network of people, maybe that might be a little bit tricky, but maybe that you can share your grievances with and navigate that situation as a collective. You could find a support group outside of your work environment, which I probably think is the best way to do it. Maybe it could be your therapist, your mentor that's outside of the work environment, to kind of learn what things or what approaches that you can employ to navigate day to day, proper way to respond to inappropriate comments or stonewalling, so that you are still finding yourself on the up and up on the professional level. You can document your work, make sure that you are meticulous in submitting whatever you need to submit, when you submitted it, how you submitted it, the quality of the work that you submitted, and also, unfortunately, documenting the things that you're experiencing. Keep it in a notebook and log it, date it. And, if something happens to unfortunately reach its tipping point, and you may find that keeping those copious notes will be of service to you. And then, if it persists, maybe you'll be able to salvage your sanity if the company's large enough and post for another position within the organization. If you like the organization and it's just that particular department that's toxic, and try to transfer out of the department and get promoted laterally or vertically to another position that may be more amiable for you. Last but not least, if you tried and exhausted all those different types of options, even to the point where you sat down with management and had a formal meeting to talk about what your grievances are, and you don't feel that you're heard, you don't feel that solutions that they presented or even that you presented were received appropriately, you could basically start thinking about your exit plan. Hi guys, we're talking about toxic work environments right now. So once you've kind of gone down your list of things that you're experiencing, documenting, participate in a support group, whether it's other individuals at that place of business, a mentor that's outside of that place in business, a therapist, a trusted best friend, whomever that is. Also sitting down with your manager, the collective of decision makers, and airing your grievances out in a professional manner, trying to come up with solutions. And if you've employed all of those tactics, then you might have to sit back and say, this may not be the place for me. And employ some productive ways where you can maintain your sanity, still produce as you should, without impairing the quality of your work, so that when you do decide to exit, you actually are basically creating an exit plan. You're going to be prepared to leave that position unscathed. So, like I said, the best way that you can do it is before you even set your feet through the door of an employer, if you've had an experience that's toxic in a work environment, do your due diligence before the interview. Read about that company. What are the employees saying about working there? Go online, do your research. If you know people that work there, or try and find people that work there and ask them what their opinions are. Then when you go into the interview, make sure that it's not a one-directional conversation, that it is a dialogue where you're also exchanging questions to the interviewer about the company culture, the reasons why the position is open, what were the challenges of the position, what's the culture of the company, questions that would be integral to you identifying red flags as to whether or not the environment is going to be conducive to your well-being and your growth and advancement overall. So let's see. As far as relationships, let's talk about toxic relationships. That could be romantic partners or friends. How would I describe a toxic relationship with friends? I would say you find them to be manipulative. Toxic friends can be folks that are looking to usurp a lot of your time and energy. You find that they're draining. You may even experience a little bit of apathy of sharing your time with them, because there's something about their energy that when they present themselves to you, it's not welcoming. So when you have a toxic friendship or relationship, let's just talk about friendships, because relationships is another deep dive there. The best thing that you can do, depending on how close your relationship with this individual, you could have another dialogue with them and sit down and say, when you talk with me about X, I'm not comfortable about these types of things, or that's something that I'm not into anymore. I know that's something that we used to do back when we were in our 20s. I'm now in a different stage in my life. I don't have the same kind of time to devote to these types of activities. If you like, we can do this. And maybe you can redefine the dynamics of your friendship. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you've evolved and the person has evolved in a different direction. That's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just that you've gone in two different directions, and you need to be able to redefine your boundaries and then have that individual respect the boundaries that you have, and vice versa. So toxic friendships can be also very, very draining. But like I said, I think that the biggest solution for that one is setting boundaries and moving forward. So anyway, that is my thought on toxic work environments and toxic people. I think the next time that I come on here that I want to talk about relationships, whether or not there's such a thing as a good woman, and should we as women expect men to be good men as well in the dating scene. So usually we work really hard at being the good woman so that we can become the dutiful wife. So, but is it a one-way street or not? So anyway, that's all for now. Thank you for joining me this evening for the Breakdown Podcast. Topic was toxic work environment and toxic people. I will save this live. Be sure to watch it again and share your thoughts below. Good night.